Today we have the Horizon Walker Ranger, which is a subclass from the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. A subclass for the Ranger that is, it's balanced to some extent, if you would call balanced the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. It is balanced because it's a class that's natively on the game, on the tabletop game. That being said, it's just a class that was not available on the launch of Baldur's Gate 3. If you actually want to play this class in Baldur's Gate, then here you have it. And essentially all you have to do, this is available on console, PlayStation 5 and PC and Xbox. All you have to do is just go right in here into your mod manager, and then you select classes right here. Although this is a subclass, if you click classes, it is going to show you still the class. This is the Horizon Walker Ranger subclass. Now there's a couple of changes that they actually did to the class for it to be able to work better on Baldur's Gate 3. Naturally, this is just liberties that the modders have to take, just as Larian took some liberties with some skills and stuff that you can basically use in a video game, that it wouldn't make that much of a sense that you have on the tabletop, and then you would like, it would be somewhat different on the video game than it would be on the tabletop. That being said, this is a subclass that specializes on fighting beings from ethereal planes, different planes of existence, and it's just your regular ranger that it's going to have a little bit of an extra edge against extra little things. It has also different little spells that are going to make it more viable for it to be used as a solo. I'm not going to be using, remember that I do have a video, it's a very old video about rangers using arrows, and arrows being overpowered, especially because you can steal them and you can use like all kinds of different arrows in the gameplay that I'm going to have for you right here. I'm going to show you how proficient this guy is without using arrows. That is not to speak about using the arrows of many targets, the all kind of different arrows that you have in here in the game. It's just, it gets so monstrous because of the different types of arrows that you have in here, because this guy is just viable and usable as he is right here. So here are the recommended ability scores that you should have for this class. There's not going to be that much of a change in here. We are going to be using the Amulet of Constitution on the 3rd act of the game, so that's the only major change that it's going to happen. Your main attack rules and your armor class is going to be coming from Dexterity, so naturally that's going to be your main stats. That being the case, we are going to reach Dexterity to 20, and then we're going to be using different things to increase our damage. Now this is on the 1st act of the game, and this is mostly throughout the entirety of your playthrough. This is how your stats should be looking like. However, if you feel that this is going to be a frontliner, you can, for example, downgrade Strength right in here and have a little bit more of Charisma. Now, for the skill proficiencies, we have a Sleight of Hand. This is a character that can manage to be our main thief, the one that takes care of the traps, the one that takes care of stealing things and what have you. So that's something very interesting about this class right here. He also has the proficiency on Arcana, but since we're not using that much of intelligence, also you do have to have in mind that one of your main stats for your spells is going to be Wisdom, but more often than not we're going to be building for the damage for this character to be done mainly and purely from Dexterity. So that's one thing to consider. Do not worry that much about a Wisdom right here with this character. These are the stats that you're going to have all throughout the rendition of the playthrough. Once you reach the end game, the final 3rd act of the game, that's when you can downgrade your Constitution, because we're going to be using the Amulet of Constitution. Quite a bit of the spells that we actually use, they do require quite a bit of concentration, meaning that we can now allocate our saving throws in here for the different points that we have in here. And this is ideally somewhat close to this is how our character should be looking like in here. So that's ideally how it's going to be looking like in the third act of the game, when we have access to the Amulet of Constitution, and we actually do have those extra points from Constitution right there. Now, your favorite enemy is not going to be of consequence. I do not advise for you to take the Ranger Knight, because we're not going to be using heavy armor with this Ranger. We're actually going to be using medium armor that is going to yield us more armor class, believe it or not, because of the high dexterity that we're going to have. Believe it or not, that's going to be more armor class than the regular heavy armors that you're going to have in the game. So might as well just take anything that you would like to take in here. I'd like to take the Bounty Hunter to get our proficiency on investigation and things like that. It's up to your personal preference. The Natural Explorer, I like to take the Urban Tracker to have the extra proficiency on the sleight of hand if you're not going to have a thief on your party right here. I am not going to bore you with the details of leveling up and having each specific individual spell that you are going to have with this class, because more often than not it's going to be a martial class. But there's a couple of spells that it's worth having. I like to take the Speak with Animals because of contextual things and being able to speak with animals. That's just a personal preference. Ensnaring Strike, it's always a favorite for Rangers, especially if you're going to be moving throughout the battlefield quite a lot, which, spoiler alert, this is a character class that is going to be moving throughout the battlefield quite a lot. And with the fighting style, you're going to be taking archery, because this is going to be an archer. Now, level 3, that's when we can actually take our subclass. This is what's going to change our character the most, and that's what's going to be different than the rest of the Rangers right here. It's going to give us the Distance Strike, which is going to be a little bit better than the rest of the damages that we're going to have as a evase action of using our weapon. Although, like I always say, it's always better to be using different types of arrows with this kind of characters. Then we're going to have the Planar Mark, which is essentially going to give us 1d8 more damage on a specific enemy that we're fighting at that time. We also have access to the protection from good and evil. Whenever you're fighting celestials, aberrations, elementals, fiends, fays, and undead, you're going to have advantage against them, and they're going to have disadvantage against you. So that's always very useful. The first feat that we are going to be taking is Sharpshooter. Remember that this is going to give you a penalty on your attack rolls, as giving you the bonus on your damage rolls, meaning that it's more difficult for you to hit the mark, to hit the targets. So what you're going to want to be doing most of the time with this character is have some kind of advantage against your enemy by either marking them or using the Ensnaring Strike or attacking from high grounds. The archers have a little bit of an easier time trying to have higher chances of dealing damage to enemies, not only through high dexterity, but this is what you're going to be taking at level 4. Now at level 5, you get somewhat of the bread and butter of this class. You get access to the Misty Step, which you will see me using throughout the rendition of the gameplay that I have for you right here in the background. See if you want to solo with this character, you want to lone wolf with this character. Not only will you have lots and lots of high armor class, you're going to be reaching around 27 armor class by the end game if you're following the guide properly and the itemization properly. But this is going to allow you to move throughout the battlefield. It's very difficult for the enemy to land hits on you, so it's more difficult for the enemy to get close to you if you're using your high grounds and you're positioning properly with this character with the Misty Step. And at this point you also receive the bonus attack, which is always very useful. Now at level 6, this is of no consequence. If you're going to ask about should I take cold, fire, poison, resistance and things like that on my favorite enemy, it's really of no consequence. This is up to your personal preference. It's not going to alter the outcome of the build and the usage on it on the battlefield. The next major decision that we are going to take is going to be at level 8, because we have a new feat. At this point, all you're going to be doing, it's going to be increasing your dexterity. This is not only going to increase your initiative, your armor, but it's also going to be increasing your attack rolls and your damage rolls as well. Now, interestingly enough, once you reach level 9, you get access to hasting yourself. This is very useful because you can get +2 to your armor class. However, have in mind that concentrating your character with this specific class is very useful because of the mods that you have. They increase your DPS, and all in all, it's always a nice idea to choose which what are you going to be concentrating yourself in. But if you're going solo, like for a solo type of playthrough, and you use haste, you use your high mobility because of the haste, your high damage, your arrows, you are actually going to get a new spell, which is very powerful to have the lightning arrow right here. However, if you want to take the maximum capacity and potential of this class, I am showing you in the gameplay in the background that you're very proficient by yourself just by using the base class. But if you're using things like arrows, this just becomes a monster of killing things so fast that they are never going to realize what happened in the battlefield at that time. Again, favorite enemy, a natural explorer, nothing that important on level 10. You can replace spells in here if you want to change one of your low level spells, like for example the Hail of Thorns, to have something a little bit different from here, like for example Conjure Varach. This is actually quite powerful, especially for dealing AoE damage, very useful. And then finally, at level 12, the final thing that we are going to do to finally establish a character is going to increase your ability improvement in here to raise your dexterity all the way to 20. This is going to give us +5 to our attacks and damage rolls. That is also very important for our itemization. Now with the itemization, because of the type of class that we are right now, you will notice that I'm using a shield. The reason for that being is very important. More often than not, we are going to be a ranger, so we're not going to be engaging in close melee combat. Whenever someone gets close to us, we are going to be moving with Misty Step. Hence, we want to maximize the potential armor class that we have available. So you're going to have on the itemization, you do have links to exotic armors. The exotic armors basically allow you to bypass the limit of number 2 to your armor class that you would have as a base with your character. So for example, right here, if I have 17 armor class plus my 5 armor class from my dexterity, that's 22 armor class plus 3 armor class that I'm getting from the basic shield. That's 25 armor class, and if I'm hasting my character, that's 27 armor class. It's very difficult for the enemy to deal damage to me, especially if they have to chase me throughout the battlefield because I'm using Misty Step like a maniac. So this is a very useful character to have as a solo character, and that's very versatile because you do have to be moving throughout the battlefield quite a lot. We're going to be using the Helldust boots so that no one can penalize our mobility. The Helldust gloves in here to increase our fire damage. You can also use the Dark Justiciar gauntlets in the second act of the game right here. We have the Killer Sweetheart right here. Then we also have the Strange Conduit Ring, and then we can be using either the Amulet of Greater Health, although if you're going to be erasing, if you're not want to dabble that much with your ability scores, you can also use the Surgeon Subjugation Amulet. It's very powerful to use this thing, for example, against a very powerful enemy, because this is going to paralyze them. Whenever you deal damage to a paralyzed enemy, that's going to be a guaranteed critical hit. If you do a guaranteed critical hit with, like for example, the many targets arrows, they are going to be guaranteed critical hits to every single target that they deal damage to, provided that the first critical hit was a guaranteed critical hit. So that's a very powerful combo right there. And now the gist of everything, it's very simple. Essentially, what you are going to be doing is that you're going to be marking your targets with your different types of concentrations that you have. If you're playing solo, then you're probably going to want to be using haste on your character. That's going to yield you mobility to be nimble and to be able to move throughout the battlefield at your leisure without having to worry about that much about the enemies that you have in front of you. That's going to open the leniency that you're going to have to be able to fight from the distance. And also, thanks to Misty Step, you should always going to be taking advantage of the higher grounds. Remember that because of Sharpshooter, it's very difficult for us to land hits on itself because of the attack roll penalty on enemies that are very close to us, and also enemies that are on the same level ground that we are in. Not that we are that shabby when it comes to attack rolls. Our attack rolls are just fine. It's just that since you already have the Misty Step, then you can also be reaching higher places that enemies cannot reach you, that they have to jump, that they have to be spending actions to get close to you. And don't worry about using the opportunity attacks, because remember that your armor class is so high that you can bypass some little bit of an extra damage. Do not use the disengage. Never use disengage. Always use Misty Step or something different that allows you to have a little bit of more reach when it comes to higher grounds. So always save your extra action, your bonus action for positioning. Never disengage with this character. Anyways, if you like the content, like and never super appreciate it. No, I told you today, you're gorgeous and beautiful person. You're a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.